is going to start the recording now. The reason we're doing this is to make sure that everybody who wants to submit a proposal for this site, whether or not they are here today, gets the same information as everybody who is here today. So for those who I haven't met, my name is Lisa Helps, and I am the executive lead for BC Build's project origination. And we're here today to answer your questions and share information about the opportunity in the city of North Cowichan, 9800 Willow Street, which is actually in downtown Chemainus. The main purpose of today's session really is to answer your questions so that we give you everything you need to bring forward proposals to us. Before we get to your questions, I'm just going to give a brief rundown of the opportunity and where we are now in the process. And then I'm going to hand it over to John from the City of North Cowichan, who will provide a bit more information. And then it's really over to you to make sure that we are providing everything that we can, answering all your questions in order to get your proposals in. So I'm just going to share my screen to walk you through where we are. Right now, you can see that we're on the Housing Development Opportunities website. And if you wanted to, after the session, scroll down and review anything that's been shared today, it's all here. But I want to just take you to the bottom of the page to our process and just to let you know where we are today and how this process works and what will happen next. So we're here with the zoned land posted on the BC Build site, and we are seeking your proposals for this opportunity to build a building in the city of North Cowichan. The proposal call is open for a good 3 months, and the date was set by the city. So the opportunity closes at the end of July. Once it does, and once we've received your proposals, an evaluation committee made up of BC Builds and Cowichan staff will evaluate the proposals, and I'll talk about the evaluation criteria in a moment. Depending on the number of proposals we get, that will determine how long it takes us to do the evaluation. Once we're through that, we will then let the successful proponent and the unsuccessful proponents know. And then the next key step in the process is signing a conditional land contribution letter. So this would outline the conditions that we all need to meet over the next year to get projects under construction. And that is the BC Build's mandate that we move quickly from concept to construction. So 12 to 18 months is the timeline that we've been given to get construction started. Just to give you a bit more sense of what would be in this conditional land contribution letter that would be jointly signed, BC Builds would commit in that year to providing guidance and insight and ultimately bringing forward applications for funding and financing. The successful proponent would do the development permit drawings, building permit, everything needed to get the project to construction. And then the City of North Cowichan would, of course, fast track and prioritize those permitting applications and anything else that's necessary in order to get the project built. So that's where we are today and where we will be, hopefully a year from July, seeing shovels in the ground on this site. I want to talk now about the evaluation criteria. So this is listed very clearly in the property opportunity notice. You can go and reflect on it and read it and make sure that you're attending to it as you put your proposals together. So up here are the mandatory requirements. And to this, when we get your proposals, we will simply answer yes or no. Is the applicant eligible? Are they meeting the target household incomes? In this case, there is no operator needed. The Community Land Trust is the operator, so we're looking for a turnkey building. So this is not relevant. And then thirdly, does the proposed developer have demonstrated development experience? Each of these terms is spelled out really clearly in the property opportunity notice. So please read what a yes looks like and what a no looks like. Once we've been through that, if the answer to all of these is yes, then we go on to rank the criteria or rate the proposal based on this ranked criteria. So BC Builds is a program that is meant to deliver market and slightly below market rental housing to middle income British Columbians. It's not an affordable housing program or a supportive housing program, and there's no ongoing operating subsidy. So this top criteria here is 20% or 20 points out of 100 for the financial viability and sustainability of the project. And we don't mean environmental sustainability here. We mean, is the project financially sustainable without an ongoing operating subsidy? The second piece here is important, and I'll just take a bit of time to explain it briefly, and you may have more questions once we get to the question period. This is the amount of per unit grant or per unit subsidy required. So we are putting equity into this project, subject, of course, to the pro forma and the approvals process and so on. But it is owned and operated by a nonprofit. So BC Builds can bring cash to the project in the form of a grant that would come in at the beginning of construction to help offset the construction cost. When you're building your pro formas, the way to do so is the amount of per unit subsidy is how much it costs to get 20% of the units to 20% below market. So if you calculate what does it cost to build 100% of the units at market and then drop down to 20% of units at 20% below, that's how you determine what the per unit grant amount would be for this project. And then that's I guess the base or the starting point. And then are there other tools that you can bring, innovative building mechanisms, et cetera, to reduce the amount of per unit grant that's required? One more thing on this, when you're building your pro formas, even though we're only asking that 20% of units be 20% below market, the total grant amount or the grant amount per unit applies to every unit in the building. And I'll just give a 100 unit example, even though there are definitely not 100 units that are going to go on this site, but just to illustrate what I'm saying so it's clear to everyone. If you're building a building with 100 units, you say, how much does it cost to get 100 units at market? Then you drop down 20% of units to 20% below. So there's your equity gap. That is the per unit subsidy that's required. The grant amount then is applied to all 100 units, not just the 20. So, and that's all laid out relatively clearly in the BC Builds program framework, but it's one of the things we've had the most questions about. Does the grant apply to the 20 units or does it apply to all 100 units? It applies to all of the units in the building. Next weighting here is 15 points for the percentage of units at 20% below market. So the minimum is 20% of units at 20% below. That is the BC Builds criteria, and that's what the grant is meant to essentially buy in each of these projects. But we will be awarding points or scores for if you can get 23% of units at 20% below market or 25% and so on. So that's something that we'll be evaluating. So too with the target household incomes. Those are laid out clearly in the BC Builds program framework and also on the renters page. You have to hit the target household incomes to be eligible, but what we're evaluating here is how low in the range or how far below the maximums are you able to provide housing for. So, the range and it's more important to look at the maximum than the range. The maximum for a studio or one bedroom is $131,000 household income. The maximum for 2 bedrooms plus $191,000 household income. Those are obviously very high for the Cowichan Valley. We're not targeting those incomes, but as far below as you can get, as far below those household income targets that you can get in terms of aiming your rent, the more points will be awarded. And then finally, speed to market. This is the last one that we're giving significant weighting to. we don't only want to get these buildings under construction quickly. We want to get people living in these homes as quickly as possible. So if you've got innovative building techniques, if you've got ways to expedite, please share those with us. And that's a 15% or 15 point out of 100 rating. There are some smaller things that are worth 5 points. I'm not going to go into those because you can look at them when you go look at the property opportunity notice. I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to hand it over to John, and he's going to tell you anything he wants to about this opportunity that will help you build good proposals for him and for us to look at. So John, over to you.
Thank you, ma'am. And I'll just comment on the context for those who aren't familiar with the site. There is a public library on one side of it and light commercial development on the other side, which hosts community policing and neighborhood house. So you have sort of civic uses on either side of you. One is a leasehold, that's the neighborhood house and the community policing function. And the other one is, of course, the Vancouver Island Regional Library owns and operates that site. So it is right in the core of the city and directly across from Water Wheel Park, which is the main park in the community for the downtown core. Has some heritage features, and it's likely that there's some perhaps intent to have a heritage feel and look to the building, only because it's surrounded by a fairly significant amount of Victorian era heritage style developments, you know, so there might be some attention paid to that component. The context also is that because you're in the downtown core, the lot is fairly contained. There isn't a lot of parking. What I would say is that there is a second piece of land behind the proposed build site, which we also own as North Cowichan, which we have made potentially available to take up the parking for the project. So if you're looking at your parking ratios and trying to work that out, and the full parking ratios would apply, given that this would be aimed pretty squarely at folks with enough income to have automobiles, you know. So we won't expect to see a relaxation of the parking requirements, but we have potentially made provision for that by making the other piece of land available, which is directly across the back of the project, across an alleyway. So that's the parking context. And then you'll notice that the zoning is a mixed use category. I think CD 16, I believe. Yeah. And then that does include a residential apartments and et cetera, et cetera. So theoretically under that zone, you could build exclusively residential. The intent, however, is that it would be a mixed use development. And because the village core land use plan speaks to that, it really wants to see some sort of ground level use that's non-residential. And we could, you know, deliberate and discuss about what that might look like. The comment from my planning department is that the CD16 zone has been sort of noted that it's not quite consistent with the OCP in terms of it might permit a fully residential use on that site. But that kind of conflicts with the village plan, which says we should have some kind of animated commercial space on the ground floor. So the question I put to my planning department is what would happen if a proposal came forward that was exclusively residential and it conflicted with the village plan. They've gone off to weigh that around and talk to the legal staff and the department. We're the landowner, and for us to be in conflict with our own OCP and village plan might be a problem. So we'll see if we can resolve that so everyone knows where we're going. But as it stands, I would suggest that we would look to have on the street face at least some sort of commercial or community-based space that's not residential. On the back of the building that faces the alley, we could probably get away with the residential function, but that street face is probably where the sticking point will come around. Is it wholly residential, or do we want a little commercial face on the street front there? So just to note that. And the last thing I would say is that the intent, of course, is to get as many units as we can on that. The unit mix would be entirely up to yourselves to figure out what's best. It's not a huge chunk of land, I would just say that, but we'd be happy to see a mix that accommodates some families as well. That's a crunchy point for Chemainus citizens. It's difficult to find a home big enough in that town to raise a family in, and that's sort of one of the things we've been alerted to is, boy, it would be great to have 2 or 3 bedroom units somewhere in there. So, but again, the unit mix that seems most appropriate to get us to where we want to go, we'd be happy to accept. Just if you can note that family housing is pretty short in Chemainus. So I think that's probably the main elements I wanted to cover today, and happy to take any questions related to the zoning or those sorts of things. And if I don't know the answer, I'll certainly go find it out for you.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, John. And just what I heard, and this came up in another session, we want to be clear about the kind of proposals that we're going to be looking at favorably. So my understanding is that the preference is retail on the bottom floor front with residential above. So let's just want to make sure that everyone's clear about that. You can go and figure out whether your policy is in conflict with itself, but for the purposes of this proposal, retail on the ground floor, residential in the back is fine. And then just to note, just for clarity, that the owner and operator of the building would be the community land trust. So the North Cowichan has already has an operator in place. So this is kind of a turnkey building provision. So with that, the rest of the time here is yours. Please ask anything that you need at all to make sure that you have all the information to go away and bring us some good proposals. So if you don't want to speak directly into the meeting, you don't have to. You can use the chat. If you are wanting to speak into the meeting, we welcome that. And just please use the hand up function so we have some semblance of order. Someone's got to have a question. I know it's always hard to be the first one. Maybe pop it into the chat if you don't feel comfortable speaking. This is our 5th info session we've done across the province today, and there's always this kind of awkward silence after myself and the municipality share information because everyone's like taking it in. But really, this is your time. We've created this session for you, so I want to make sure that it's available for you to ask anything you need. Questions during the proposal process come to info@bcbuildshomes.ca. However, we'd really like this opportunity to be an opportunity to ask questions. That's why we've created it. We will obviously take your follow-up questions. Our hope is that between today's session, which will be recorded and posted, and everything that is already in the property opportunity notice, and then available through the city's official community plan, design guidelines, anything else you need, you'll have to make the proposal submission. So we're not saying no questions after today. If you do need to have questions after today, please send them to info@bcbuildshomes.ca, not directly to the municipality, and then we will make sure that not only you get the answer to your question, but if it's not already publicly available, we'll make sure it's posted for everybody else on the site as well. Yeah, Michelle, go ahead.
I'm just wondering about servicing for the site. Services that come into it, are they sized appropriately? Are we going to have to upsize them? Are we going to work with North Cowichan to do that? Water, sewer, power, all of that stuff.
All right. The site is fully serviced. I've asked for an engineering review on the size of those services. The typical building in that vicinity is all 2-story buildings. So, I'm not sure what a 5-story, there was a question about the allowable height, which is 15 meters. That probably puts you at a 4-story building roughly. So depending on the intensity of the height and density proposed, but I have asked for an engineering review of what the services to that site are, and I don't have that at the moment. They're still digging that up, but we can certainly provide that to the proposal.
Thank you. And has there been a geotechnical assessment done of the land? Is that required?
I don't think it will be required. There was a fire hall that sat on the site for many, many years since the 1950s. So it was well used. It has a 2-story structure on it for a number of years. My guess is that there wouldn't be any necessity unless you were going underground parking. God bless you if you decide to do that, but yeah.
Okay, I'll just actually, for BC Build's financing, a geotechnical assessment is required. So not obviously before you submit your proposal, that would be in the pre-development period. It's good to have comfort from John that everything is good on that site, but in order to lend money to get it built, geotech is one of our pre-development requirements. But again, not now, after that conditional land contribution letter is signed. Okay, thanks. And John, if you could get that engineering, or not
Mhm.
engineering, the servicing report to Alistair as soon as possible. We want to try and update
Gotcha.
the property opportunity notices early next week so that everyone has ample time to look through. Next question in the chat is, what is the square footage of the site, John?
Yeah, that's a good question. Let's see. My planning department was supposed to be here today to answer those questions, but they're not. So I'm going to have to shoot that out. What I would do is I would give you the square footage of the site as well as the proposed parking site as well. So I can give you that. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm going to have to send that. Yeah.
Okay. Just a question with respect to the parking. So you said that that parking lot behind the site can be used by the residents of this building. Is that correct?
Yeah, that can be the official parking for the building. Yes, we're prepared to make that available for that purpose. Yeah.
That's amazing. Okay, so is there no parking required on site? The whole lot that you're putting here is meant to be filled up with
Yes.
residents. Okay.
Yeah, it's quite a small lot. If you stand and look at it, you realize, yeah, if you put parking on that thing, you really wouldn't have any units left typically. So it would be quite tight, as well as the commercial space would require parking, but there's street parking in front of the building, so that's all right, you know. But the resident parking would be the lot behind across the alley.
Okay. Ali, will you track all these things that John's going to send so we make sure that we can get them included in the updated property opportunity notice? Okay, great. I'm going to go into the chat and then Michelle, I'll come back to you. Love that we've all got lots of questions now. This is great. Going to Fiona's question in the chat, is there anything on the site at the moment that would need to be demolished? John?
No, that's been taken care of when they tore down the fire hall to build the public library. So the lot is empty, flat, and waiting to be developed. Yeah.
Perfect. And then kind of, I guess this almost feels like a follow-up question. Where does the site stand now, environmental contaminant concerns, phase one, et cetera? Are there any specific concerns, fire hall use, retardants, contaminants, et cetera?
None that we're aware of. And again, the public library just finished their building. It's probably only about 3 years old. So if there would have been a contamination issue, that would have come forward when they did their development on the same property, because that's the same site where the fire hall sat. They got one half of the property to build the new library on, and the other half is the site we're speaking of today. So
Okay,
because
that's
that
great.
development's only 2 or 3 years old, I'm pretty sure there would have been a hue and cry if there'd been a big contamination issue there, and we didn't hear anything from that development. So
Okay, again, that's good assurance that the site probably looks good from an environmental point of view. As part of the due diligence to lend against the program, the proposal, or for the construction financing and takeout. The standard due diligence requires an environmental assessment, so that again could come later, but that's part of the requirement for receiving low-cost construction financing, the grants, and the takeout mortgage for the project. Yeah, Michelle, back to you.
One sec. There we go. So the parking lot, if it's in the parking area behind it, the lot. So I'm assuming that as a proposal, we would have to include that cost in the proposal to prepare that parking area and get it set up.
yeah, it is also flat and graded, et cetera, et cetera. So it would be really just marking and paving essentially. Yeah.
Okay. The environmental assessment and the geotechnical assessment that are required after the letter sign, is that a cost that we would have to carry in our proposal as well?
Yeah, when you look at the budget template that we've provided, there's a capital budget and the operating budget, and everything that should be required should be listed in there. I'm just looking.
I wasn't able to access that. I clicked on the links for the framework as well as the budget template, and it just said page not available.
Yeah, when did you do that? We fixed it. It was broken and now it is fixed. So
Wonderful.
re-download, and all of those links are on. We didn't feel too worried about it because all of those links are also on the site itself. But yeah, that some of the property opportunity notices, when we uploaded, the links got a bit wonky, but you should be able to look at it now. I've got it here as well. I can just share. I think I've got the
Sorry, if I can just add in too, if it's still not working for you, you may need to clear the cache on your computer and then try again, because it may still be blinking out of memory to the old link.
So here's, to answer the question, here's the detailed budget in terms of, or the detailed spreadsheet to use to build your budget. So you would put those fees in this section. We would expect that, geotech is there. Basically anything that you'd need to pay for in a regular development, environmental consultant. So that all goes into the budget that you put in for the project. I'm going to stop sharing now, but if you click on the link in the property opportunity notice, you can get to this budget template, and then also on the main housing development opportunities site, when you look at eligibility or submission requirements, it's there as well. And you don't have to use this spreadsheet, but it's probably best if people do use it, because A, you see the complete package we're looking for, and B, it'll make it easier for us when we're evaluating the proposals. But it's not actually a requirement, but it's there for to make it easier for everybody.
I have a question about the funding framework. When is the funding and financing secured, and does this project have to go through a preliminary approval process and then a final approval process, or is it a one-stop shop for funding and financing?
That's a great question. So the first thing is getting that conditional land contribution letter signed, and part of that commitment from BC Builds is that we will work to get funding and financing in place within a year. We can do provisional project approval and final project approval at the same time. We prefer not to, though, because we want to make sure that, so for those who aren't familiar with the way that BC Housing, which is where BC Builds is situated, the way that the financing and funding approvals process works, when you're at 50% design and a Class C estimate, we take you through provisional project approval. And that's when, in this case, the grant money and the financing is notionally allocated to the project. But then to make sure that we're really mitigating against cost escalation during construction, we generally go through final project approval once the project has been tendered and is ready to build. And that way we're making sure that we've got as real as costs as possible before construction starts, and so that we don't have to go back in the middle of construction and look for additional funding, because that never goes over well. So I think that's how we would structure these as well. Class C and 50% design is provisional project approval, and then final project approval. With BC Builds, we have different kind of an expedited approvals process, and so it can take as basically BC Builds can move as quickly as the process moves. So the timing of provisional project approval and final project approval shouldn't be considered as barriers. And certainly, we've got a mandate. I think on a site like this, it's a square site in a downtown. It is serviced. When we work through the conditional land contribution letter with the successful proponent, we're probably going to want to aim for 12 months from the time we sign the letter to getting to construction. There's no reason this should take 18 months. And so our financial approvals process would happen within that period.
Sorry, if I may, Lisa, I just wanted to comment that I've just measured the site, and it's about 575 square meters.
Perfect. Okay. Do not send us that follow-up information. With this is a record of because if people ask us questions, we're going to direct them to the video. So 575 square meters is the perfect. Okay, that's the site area.
Yeah.
All right. What else can we help with? What else do people need to know to bring forward proposals here?
I think the floor area ratio is defined in the property opportunity notice as well. So for those who want to calculate your square footage that might be available to you, or square meterage.
Yeah, the property opportunity notice, and then all of the city's relevant OCP design guidelines. Anyone submitting a proposal would want to look through those and make sure that there's a fit. What else can we help with? Is there anything else that people need to know? All right, I'm gonna just check for a second time. Oh, I'll go back to the chat, see if there's no questions in the chat. Just gonna scan. Yeah, I see maybe one more question coming in the chat. We really want to make sure that we get all the questions we can out today. And again, we're using this as an opportunity to share this information with yourselves, but also with anyone else who might have interest after the fact. I'm just watching the dots bounce, so we'll take a little.
Lisa, the deadline for submissions, is that in the property opportunity notice as well?
It's just about everywhere we could put it. So it's
Okay,
on the front
okay.
page of the property opportunity notice. It's on the website with the little the call out. Yeah, so that just as a reminder, and I'll wrap go through this again at the end. But yeah, the deadline is the 29th of July of this year. I think North Cowichan has given 3 months for this opportunity to be out there and for proposals to be put together. So yeah, thanks for that. Okay, demographics. John covered this earlier, but let's go back and cover it again because I think it's an important question. Is there more of a need for studio suites or 2 bedrooms?
I would say 2 bedrooms only because those are less available in the market typically. Either one, there would be a demand for, I would say. But we would like to see more 2 bedrooms because the market doesn't always provide those, certainly not in Chemainus, older buildings, etc. So.
Okay, and just to go back to the scoring criteria, again, BC Builds is just the buildings just need to be built to BC Building Code. So for anyone who's submitted a proposal or worked with BC Housing before, these are not, there's no need to adhere to the BC Housing design guidelines and construction standards. These are just essentially regular market buildings that are coming through this program that we've created. And then also, I just wanted to go back to the scoring criteria with respect to this question about bedrooms, unit size. You'll see, and I didn't touch on this because it's only a 5%, but unit mix. So, if you can create more, larger units without compromising the financial viability of the program, the rent profile or the pro forma, you can certainly do that. And I should have said here that each of these scoring criteria, for those who haven't yet read the property opportunity notice, each of these is spelled out. So while it just says unit mix there, this unit mix is, a few extra points if you can squeeze in some family sized units. Is there a land cost or fee to consider? No, the whole point of BC Builds is to leverage no cost underutilized land. So the land can be assumed to come into the project at zero. With thanks to the city of North Cowichan.
Yeah, thanks to BC Housing.
Thanks all around. And thanks to the fantastic proposals that are going to come in to get some housing built here in this vacant lot in the downtown. It just seems like such a good opportunity, especially, I mean, I didn't realize that the parking was kicked in with that lot out back, right? Like that
saves it because otherwise it would be tight space to build in,
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say it's in the downtown context. It's on a main street. It's very urbanized for a small town like Chemainus. It's relatively urbanized. So whether that's a family-friendly place to land, it's debatable, but just to say that it is quite an urbanized context, very walkable. So.
Perfect. All right. Anything else that anyone needs to know or would like to know? Okay, I'm going to check a second time. And third and final last call for questions. Okay. If you think of something while I'm still talking, feel free to interrupt, but I'm just going to wrap up and tell you where we go from here. So Alistair has put in the chat that a video recording of this session will be uploaded to the Housing Opportunities page next week. And when you go there to relook at this video, in case there's anything you need to go back and reference, you will also see, because John's going to send information to Alistair. Right now, it just says property opportunity notice. You will see that it says property opportunity notice dash updated. So please download the new property opportunity notice so you can see whatever additional information John sends along to us. If you do have questions after today, as noted, please send them to info@bcbuildshomes.ca. If it's information that's publicly available, we'll just direct you to where you can find it. If it's something that no one's thought of yet and is information that no one else has, we will make sure that we type that question up and type up the answer, and once again update the property opportunity notice again so that everyone has the same information to prepare their proposals. With that, I don't know where, probably most people here are from Vancouver Island. If not, I hope it's as beautiful where you are as it is on our island today. And thanks for spending time with us on this beautiful Friday afternoon. And we sincerely look forward to your proposals and to your participation in the BC Builds program. So thank you and have a good rest of the afternoon.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.